as a album and know that I could likely play every song.
This is Auto Collabs.
Right? That is
1 4 5 1.
I didn't know any of that. All I know is like you put your hands in this position and you move it up and down the fretboard at the right places, and then you have yourself a punk song. So, I mean, I don't know if Slawek, today's guest, likes punk music. We should have asked him about it. He's a little bit younger than I am. But there is something first of all, he is like one of the nicest people you will ever meet if you're going to be at a SotoCon, or if you have the opportunity to meet him in person, please do. He's the nicest people you ever meet. But there is something super punk rock about the way he executes. Like he pivots and executes. So there's something like incredibly punk rock about him, even though his persona doesn't like, I don't know. He probably listens to Screamo nonstop, but
yeah, like I think I had lunch with Slawek. He came to Nashville, and I think he smiled for the entire 45 minutes, even while he was talking. Like it was just like, yeah.
He is so nice and welcoming. How could you say no?
The punk rock part of that is he was on a trip because he had to carry the thing that they use, which is this little mini robot that they can set up in 5 minutes, right? They can't transport it because of the type of battery that it uses, so he can't like just ship it from place to place because of the cost. So this guy is on like a 14 state travel trip with the robot in the back of his trunk, right? Like just like that's punk rock. Like you gotta lay down some tunes to be able to do that level of travel, to be able to meet dealers. So he's the most friendly and most punk rock all at the same time. And I bet you he does listen to Screamo music.
Oh man, I'm excited to meet this guy. And I'd be very thrilled if the picture that you've just painted for me at a SotoCon, he's like wearing a top hat, a monocle, and is like holding a cup of tea. He's just like he's just like the total opposite of everything.
Like sophisticated.
Yeah.
He is. No, I mean, literally, I'm telling you, like underneath the smile, like straight savage. Straight savage.
I love it. I'm excited.
Well, hey, we hope that you enjoy this episode and this interview with Slawek Potasz.
Oh, Slawek, thank you so much for joining us today on the Auto Collabs podcast. We've had a little bit of time to get to know each other over the last several months, and I'm excited for this audience to hear your story and a little bit about your product, and who knows what else we'll talk about. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It means a lot to me, and yeah, awesome, to be here with you guys.
Okay, so I live in Syracuse, New York, and I think we met in Las Vegas. Was that where we met for the first time? At Digital Dealer.
And wait a second. Okay. Everybody else will know why I'm laughing here in a second, right?
And so, I mean, wait. So we met at Digital Dealer, and you told me, everyone can tell from your accent you're not from around here, and you're like, well, I'm actually moving to Syracuse, and Syracuse isn't essentially the place that everyone congregates when they come to the United States. And so, can you tell a little bit of story of like why you came to Syracuse? And that's probably a great way to kind of back into your kind of history and your product.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, getting to know someone from Syracuse, out of Syracuse is weird, because Syracuse is like, upstate New York is not definitely a huge town. However, Syracuse happens to host Genius Accelerator. Genius is the world's biggest accelerator for robotic startups. And the idea is they bring startups all across the globe to help boost jobs creation, like high-tech industry around upstate New York.
Look at you, Syracuse. Okay. You got snow and geniuses. There you go.
Sleepers.
And out of like 650 companies that applied, we're one of the 5 that were accepted. And for us, Syracuse was a very interesting place because it's still decently close to New York City. That's one thing. But then the second thing is that our friends at SpinCar are from Syracuse as well. And third of all, our investor and mentor, Jack Greco, who's co-founder at ACV Auctions, he's also in Buffalo. So we had some relationships there. And it was like a nice soft landing into, the automotive space in the US. So So that's pretty much the story. They helped us, to understand like what city is Syracuse, what this accelerator is about. And I'm coming from a city that had Europe's oldest salt mine, and Syracuse is called Salt City, so it's also quite.
That is ironic. So
No
tell us,
way.
yeah. So tell us, you came to Syracuse. You're from Poland. Tell us about like what you were up to in Poland when you started getting into robotics, like where that came from.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I've been to Hertz Car Rental and it was in Tel Aviv, and I've discovered that if you've ever rented a car at Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport, usually those cars are in like bad condition. They are badly scratched, badly damaged, and there's no issue, no reason for you to get the full coverage for such a damaged car. And so when I was returning this car, I went into a strange conversation where I was accused of doing some damages I didn't cause.
And you're like, have you seen the cars in this fleet?
Yeah, that's one thing. And the second thing is, in Israeli airports, you really need to be like 3 hours before your departure because of extra safety that happens and everything. And so I almost lost my flight, and I was like, holy, it's 21st century. We have electric cars that can accelerate faster than a free fall, from an airplane, Tesla Model Plaid. You have, self-parking cars, but you still have pen and paper and someone noting the damages, on a piece of paper. And I was like, what the hell? So, I figured out there has to be a way to do something about it. And so because like inspection is very like computational consuming, we started off with imaging. So like background removals, photography robots, soon inspection space. So yeah, that's like long story short. Right now maybe it's not like ideal time for car rental market just because of the pandemic, decline in business travels and everything. However, ideally in few years from now, if you will be, returning the car to airport, you will have, your car inspected with our technology.
Wow. That's so.
I never heard that story before. I knew your product.
Incredible story. I love when like product comes out of personal pain, because there's always just an like I think about, and this is a terrible example, but I think about the guy that, I don't know if you've heard the commercials, like the cooler pillow, right? I think it's like the My Pillow or something like that. And he's like, I always hated when a pillow wasn't cool enough, right? That guy's going to sell something and create something really cool in the market. So, you have had a lot of success overseas. What's it been like kind of coming into the U.S. market, understanding the dynamics of the rental market, the dealership market, and how the interaction with merchandising or even condition displays is maybe different from what you've experienced in your home country?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to. So that was my experience. Sorry. Yeah, what I wanted to show is, here, mind blown. So,
so he showed an image, if you're just listening, of like someone with the like nuclear explosion over their head because their mind was blown.
Yeah, exactly. So, first of all, size of the market is just unreal. I mean, literally unreal. If you ever come to Poland, we sell 800,000 cars a year, I would say, new cars in the entire country. And Poland has population of Canada. So we're in a situation.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So, Carvana sells more cars per year, I guess, than our entire country buys new cars. That's the level of I would say, scale. So that's one thing. Then the second thing is that I would say the biggest dealerships in Poland sell maybe 40, 50 cars per rooftop. And those are like decently built dealerships. I was actually speaking about this with my wife 2 hours ago, and we were just going through near Volkswagen dealership, which is like one of the biggest in our city. And I stopped there at the traffic lights and I counted how many cars are parked around the dealership. And this is the biggest dealership in our town. They had 25 cars parked. 25.
I mean, that's kind of the way it is right now too.
New cars. That's like everywhere. But we get it.
Oh, those
were
were used
used.
inventory,
Wow.
right?
Well, because they don't typically have ground stock of new, right? And where you're at, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, that's it. And then, you just drive through those huge auto plazas. I was actually a few weeks ago, I was in Denver, and I was just driving through an auto plaza center, however you call it, in Denver. And for straight 5 minutes of going 20 miles an hour, I was actually having my phone glued to the, a windscreen. And I was just recording like footage, like, doomsday, where you just go through cars for sale. And you're like, holy, that's amazing. So yeah, the scale of the market is unreal. And the maturity of your market is also awesome. I mean, you guys have, solved for so many things like, like chatbots, call center bots that automatically respond, maturity of your F&I products, all of that. Like, most Americans finance their cars. In Poland, maybe like 30% or 40% get leased. The rest is paid with cash. So that's also super, completely different perspective.
So that's like a little bit opposite. So you and I were talking when you first moved here, and you had to buy a car, and you were trying to get all your bank accounts in line, and you said to me you were surprised by how difficult it is to move money around in the U.S. banking system, right? Yeah. Because in Europe, you can just transfer money from bank to bank. And Michael Cirillo, it's a shame he's not here right now, he says the same thing. When he just recently moved to Texas from Canada, and he said he was just shocked at how difficult it was to move money from bank to bank or place to place. And so that being the truth of the banking system in Canada and Europe, you just seem like the opposite is true in the auto industry, where you come in, you realize like auto dealers they're actually far ahead, and they actually have solved a lot of problems.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say,
what car did you end up buying, by the way?
So actually, I was so, I would say, angry at some of the prices. I was actually driving rentals for half a year. So that's like what I did. And having said that, it's good I did that, because I cracked like 4 windscreens from like, small stones and everything. So that was a good move to do. However, one interesting thing is that I would say Poland, we've been, after Second World War, we've been part of like the, Iron Curtain and stuff like this. So in 1989, when Soviets left our country, we started quickly copying, best practices from Western world. And so there are some aspects like banking systems, like shopping malls, like, telecom industry, where we just, I would say, did not make some of the mistakes that the Western world did. But at the same time, from a capitalistic perspective, a real estate, if you ever go to like, real estate pictures in Eastern Europe, they suck. Like, you take pictures, of your thumb in the lens, you have, chocolate sprayed over your lenses, pictures are terrible. Nobody cleans the house before taking pictures of the house for sale. Stuff like this happens. The same with cars. So it depends. I would say like unlimited data plan for 4G, 5G is like, $10 a month, and you get like highest speed internet ever. Banking system is awesome. It's super easy to transfer cash and everything. But at the same time, the auto industry is like, so far behind in so many aspects. So yeah, that's like,
wow, even what a dichotomy. So in Poland, you're saying for like 10 or $20 a month, you get like super fast 5G, unlimited, no problem.
That's most of the world.
Yeah,
that's most of the later developed world. That because they
started there.
Telecom started in wireless instead of having to deal with unwinding the wired
frequency
ecosystem.
And basing it around that.
Yes, it's actually the same issue that auto has from a technology perspective. It's literally the same. You've heard Ben talk about this, and both of you know Ben, but like the fact that auto was the earliest adopter of a system like a DMS now actually makes it harder for auto to adjust from a tech perspective. Similar other countries, because America had telephone service first, it actually makes it harder for us to adopt these wireless technologies. So it's a really interesting correlation where like there's some things that are ahead, some things that are behind. And I think about like what you're doing with CarScanner and things like taking pictures and then background removal and all that type of stuff. Every company that I know that's doing anything similar to what you're doing is actually not based in the States. Have you seen that as or have you been surprised that it's not something that's in the market currently as far as a development resource?
Yeah, so two things that shocked me. First of all is that DMS refreshes, I would say maybe twice or 3 times a day, which is a common practice. And it's just unreal for me that, if you have your via auto shots, you have your images actually done, captured, whatever, and you need to wait for the next refresh that happens at a certain hour instead of just doing, API call to force refresh. This is super interesting. And,
can you explain that a little bit? Because I think there's some people that
for sure.
Like for me, caught that right off the bat, right? But there's some
I
people
even
that are
caught
like,
it.
Wait, why is
even
that?
caught it.
Yeah, Paul got it, right? But there's some people that are like, why is that an issue? What's the barrier that you're saying we should be able to cross from an efficiency or merchandising perspective, but we're not able to at this point? Can you just go a level deeper for us?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a freak, and I'm really trying to better understand, what are the problems that we could solve with our engineers. And so one thing I've understood and realized is that when you have actually a technology like a turntable, like CarScanner, you can, have your images, like the photo turn time of, let's say, half a day or something like this, even though those technologies actually, can capture the images right away. And at the same time, when you have lot vendors, sometimes it can be 3 to 4 to 5 days for images just to get captured and get online. And I was just trying to understand where the delays are coming from. And one thing I've learned is that some DMS systems are configured in a way that they refresh and they look and they search for new images for a given lot number, maybe twice a day, maybe 3 times a day. So even though you photograph this car at 9 a.m. in the morning, maybe you'll need to wait till noon or 3 p.m. for the next search in the database for updated images, which is it's technical limitation, which is so old school because of the way they just look for new images. If this was, done with a modern approach, it could be instantaneous, 5-second delay maybe. And right now it's just fixed, or I would say, a task every 6 hours, check if new images are there. So yeah, that's interesting delay, which is
you think about that from a used car operation perspective. We are on this morning, on the morning of recording this podcast, we are on talking about used car efficiencies on Clubhouse, and looking at the time to merchandising is so key to a used car operation's ability to be profitable, because the longer that goes, the harder it is to maintain a profitability, because you get further away from the appraised value. And so things like you're saying, our industry needs to solve for, because if you have a 9-hour time period from when something is ready to be fully merchandised to when it does, think of the volume of shoppers that could have seen your inventory in that timeline that you miss out of. So I'm glad you're poking the hole on that, because I think there's more people that need to hear, there's a whole loop of technology that creates a barrier to actually a great customer experience. Because, man, if I'm shopping at 3 p.m. one day and I don't know that car's available because I can't see the images, and then all of a sudden I don't have the accessibility to get that car and I go and purchase something else, that's a bad customer experience as an overall industry whole, right? So
100%, 100%. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So let's talk about, I would love to talk about your product for a second, because I think it's super cool. Why don't you just give us a quick synopsis of what it is? Let us know what it does, what it is, and where you're heading with it.
Sure. Imagine uneven, ugly-looking parking lot somewhere on the side of your, dealership. You have in the background.
So just a parking lot in Syracuse. Imagine,
for
right?
example. Yeah. and then imagine that we have a robot that within 5 minutes is ready to roll, and you can just drive in the cars to the robot space, and every 2.5 minutes you can have very smooth looking 360, which has superimposed virtual background, so it looks a bit like Carvana-like experience. You get interiors, you get instant background removal on that, and you can also create still images. So no matter what's the how badly short-staffed you are, or how little space you have, or how little budget you have, you don't need to invest tens of thousands of dollars into a photo booth that's indoors. You don't have to have a trained employee, because within 10 minutes YouTube video, your new employee already knows how to become a pro in taking images. And third of all, you can create a very nice looking 360 spins, which are super stable, super smooth. And then if you are looking at the time to the market, right now the market standard is that you send your images somewhere to Asia, and they manually superimpose and replace the background to your dealership building. And we do this in like 30 seconds. So we have 2 days shorter time to market with manually edited photos as well. That's what we do. So like a car photography robotized assistant that can be deployed anywhere in 5 minutes.
And this is what generation robot? Is this your first generation?
Yeah, this is our first generation robot, but this is like officially it's first generation, unofficially it's like fifth revision.
Right.
That we were like,
you're like, this is WD 45.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
No,
so-
that's really good.
Go ahead.
So when you're thinking about like, well, one, just extremely cool that in 2.5 minutes you can have a full vehicle photoed with background removal and superimposed background image. That's, I think, a game changer for any dealership that understands like speed to market. But when you think about the possibilities, because my brain starts to go like a bunch of different ways, what are the unique ways in which you see this technology being used outside of just merchandising? Because I'm sure you've kind of thought of among those use cases, and there's so many innovative dealers that are trying out new things that I'm thinking like, if you, the creator of this robot, have thought of those use cases, there's probably a dealer out there that goes, I could do that, right?
Yeah. So I have I would say attitude not like of a pushy salesman that tries to sell something off the shelf, but rather someone that tries to understand the problem, and only if I see a fit to a problem, I would try to come up with a solution. And so the problem I've learned about, after NADA, Digital Dealer, Automotive Intelligence Summit, ASOTUCon, hopefully in a few days from now, is that number one issue is, I would say, employee retention from like operation perspective, but from like business and strategy perspective is getting inventory. And so with our photography robot, we try to solve a bit for like, the retention problem and stuff. However, from like a low inventory level perspective, we're trying to better understand how we could deploy those robots with some extra hardware to look, for the underbody, to inspect for damages, and actually create like a trade-in, automated trade-in station where, average Joe could just, have the car inspected and then get offers from dealerships nearby. So then, the dealership could actually, I would say, get much more opportunities of acquiring cars 24/7.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah. So really just bouncing from kind of wholesale uses to almost retail uses in a way.
Yeah. And used vehicle acquisition. I mean, I think about putting that thing on a strip mall, like right out front, manning the station and just telling people to drive through and buying their cars, right? You're mobile. If you can set it up in 5 minutes, you can go anywhere and just acquire some cars. So, well, Slawek, I really appreciate you being on, and we appreciate you being on, not just for your accent, but your insights and your understanding of the dynamics of industries across countries. Excited to hang out with you at a SoduCon and share with more people your fancy little robot. And so on behalf of myself and Paul Daly, thank you so much for joining us on Auto Collabs.
Thank you so much. Really great to be here, and see you at the SoduCon in Philly. And hopefully, we'll run those stairs at 5 a.m. Somebody did the event there, so see you at the Rocky Stairs.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So you probably got the impression that we were talking about in the beginning of the super nice guy that is incredibly thoughtful and can figure out the angle and how to bring it to market. I love the origin story, by the way.
Yeah, the origin story of I love when it's a personal, it's almost like a personal vendetta to an issue. It's
Yes.
like, no, I will not be had by that rental company,
That's
and
the
I'm
savage
going to
part.
make the thing that nobody else is going to be had either. And then to hear his story of like taking that product to market in the European market and then coming to the US market and the way he had to do that and the different way, like through Canada and then Syracuse, and I had no clue that Syracuse was like a hotbed for AI, for these technical startups, like wild stuff. Paul, you're in this place that is becoming more interesting by the day.
We don't
right?
like people finding this stuff out because it actually is an awesome place to be.
That's great. That's outside of the snow, although I guess some people love the snow there. But then just the energy that he's talked about, like being with and among dealers and understanding the differences and the idiosyncrasies of the American market as compared to the European market, even things like financing, moving money around. Like it's just, we had the interview with Michael Johnson from Australia. It really is, I think it's key for us, especially in a moving market right now, to try and understand the way that OEMs and the way that dealers across the world are interacting with customers. It's important for us to take from these different pockets, and him bringing not just that technology but insights from Europe is, I think, important for our industry.
I think that's the big eye opener. The more people that we speak to in the industry, in the retail community from different countries, we're starting to, debunk this idea that America or North America has always been so much further ahead. We are in some ways, but in other ways, we're like, whoa, they've already been doing things a certain way in their country. They've already had to deal with certain legislation or things of that nature and had to get really creative in how they build their business. So I always enjoy conversations where we get to sit and learn from somebody who's got different perspective. And of course, that's the whole point of why we're doing this podcast, Auto Collabs. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Slawek. And did I say it right? Oh my gosh.
You did. You're good. You got it. Just rolled right out.
Biggest
Nailed
fear
it.
is getting people's names wrong. But we're so glad, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Auto Collabs. On behalf of Paul J. Daly, Kyle Mountseer, myself, Michael Cirillo, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling?